Hi class, and welcome to chapter 23, which will be on the digestive system, another long PowerPoint. So I'm going to keep the lecture much shorter. You should still look over all the slides, but I will try to highlight things I want you to learn. So we divide the organs of your digestive system into the ones of the alimentary canal, like the mouth, pharynx, esophagus, stomach, small and large intestine, the organs that make up kind of one continuous tube from start to finish. And then the accessory digestive organs, the teeth, the tongue, the gallbladder, salivary glands, liver, and pancreas. You should know well which organs make up the alimentary canal and which ones make up the accessory digestive organs. The accessory organs are connected to the alimentary canal by ducts, and they will secrete different things into the alimentary canal to break down the different food. So you should know well the alimentary canal and the accessory digestive organs, and you can see them all shown here. The abdominal regions, there's 4 lines that divide the abdominal wall into 9 regions. And these different regions are shown here between the right and left hypochondriac, right and left lumbar, and right and left iliac. You should know these regions, and you should know what more or less which organs lie in each region. So if we look here, and you can see different parts of the ascending colon, the transverse, the descending colon, and then you can kind of compare with what regions they would be in. So you should know well the regions and then what organs would lie in each region. A simpler method is sectioning the anterior abdominal wall into quadrants, such as a right and left, upper and lower quadrant. So we have the peritoneum and the peritoneal cavity. The peritoneum is a serous membrane with the visceral part surrounding the digestive organs, and the parietal peritoneum lining the body wall, and the cavity being a potential space between the two. And I won't ask you guys too many questions about this, but this just shows kind of this idea of the peritoneum during embryological development, the retroperitoneal positioning with some organs moving toward the back. I won't ask you guys too many questions about that. The mesentery is a double layer of the peritoneum that does hold organs in place. It's a site of fat storage and provides a route for circulatory vessels and nerves. So here you can see here the peritoneum and then the digestive system organs and how they lie. You have ventral mesenteries like ligaments and moral omentums. The falciform ligament binds the anterior part of the liver to the anterior abdominal wall. The lesser omentum attaches the liver to the lesser curvature of the stomach. So these is just extra mesenteries to help attach organs to each other. The dorsal mesenteries in the posterior side, the greater omentum connects the greater curvature of the stomach to the posterior abdominal wall. And then the transverse and sigmoid mesocolon holds and connects the transverse and sigmoid colon in their places. And here's a look at all their mesenteries. You can kind of see this one, the greater omentum kind of looks like an apron, which holds the small intestines in place. And again, these are just extra tissue and connective tissue that holds all the abdominal organs in their places. And here's another look at the mesenteries, the ligaments, greater and lesser omentum, and how they're holding different things in place. We have secondarily retroperitoneal organs, which will fuse to the dorsal or posterior abdominal wall. Peritoneal organs are digestive organs that keep their mesentery. I'm going to kind of pass over some of that. I don't think you guys really need to know this, so I'll pass over that. Then the digestive process, ingestion occurs in the mouth. Propulsion is the movement of food, with peristalsis meaning the major means of propulsion. Mechanical breakdown prepares the food for chemical digestion. So mechanical breakdown is chewing, churning food in the stomach, segmentation, and segmentation is the rhythmic local constrictions of your intestine. Digestion then is when complex molecules are broken down to their chemical components, and this happens in the mouth, the stomach, and the small intestine. Absorption is the transport of digested nutrients, and defecation is the elimination of indigestible substances as feces, also known as going number 2, but defecation is the proper medical term for that. So you can see here the different activities of the GI tract and where more or less they occur between ingestion, mechanical breakdown, propulsion, digestion, absorption. You can see that the large intestine mainly absorbs water and the small intestine mainly absorbs all the nutrients. Peristalsis then is the major means of propulsion, where adjacent segments of the alimentary canal relax and contract at the same time. So we have adjacent segments contracting and relaxing, moving food, for example, from the mouth down to the stomach. Segmentation then is the rhythmic local contraction of the intestine where it mixes food with digestive juices. And this is more what segmentation does. It kind of relaxes and contracts, moving the food forward and backward, where the food is mixed and slowly propelled forward. The histology of the alimentary canal wall, so you have the same 4 layers present in the alimentary canal from the esophagus to the anus, although kind of the thickness or width of those layers might change a little bit. You should know these layers in order from internal to external or external to internal. Starting in the innermost layer, we have the mucosa layer, then we have the submucosa layer, which will have all your blood, lymphatic vessels, and nerve fibers. Then we have the muscularis externa layer, which has 2 layers of muscle tissue. And then we have the serosa layer, which is the visceral peritoneum. And you can see these 4 layers shown here. Again, you should know the layers going from innermost to outermost, starting with the mucosa, submucosa, submuscularis externa, and serosa. And again, these are the 4 layers. They are the same, starting in the esophagus to the anus. The thickness might vary a little bit, but the layers will remain the same. And you can see those layers here. And again, mucosa, submucosa, muscularis externa, and serosa. You should know those 4 layers in order. Smooth muscle then is primarily found in the walls of your viscera. Fibers elongated. It's grouped into different sheets, the longitudinal and circular layer. And these smooth muscle layers will help propel your food along. So again, you can see the layers of the stomach there, or of the GI tract organs there. Smooth muscle contraction, the mechanism of contraction is similar, where you have myofilaments sliding past each other by pulling on their cytoskeleton. Calcium is needed from the sarcoplasm to stimulate contraction. Contraction is slow and sustained. It takes about 30 times longer to contract and relax, which makes it very resistant to fatigue. And this is good because energy requirements are low. Mitochondria are not abundant because a lot of your smooth muscles in the GI tract need to constantly be working to pass their food along. So here we have the cytoskeleton elements involved in the contraction of smooth muscle, and I won't ask you guys too many questions about that. Innervation of smooth muscles by your autonomic nervous system. Again, I will not ask you too much about the innervation. You have different nerve plexuses to help innervate the different layers of the GI tract. The mouth then, so we'll start at the top and we'll go through rather quickly the organs. The mouth is the oral cavity. It's mucosa lined. It has boundaries, which are shown there. There's a mucosal layer. The lips and the cheeks are formed from the orbicularis oris and the buccinator muscles. So here's a look at the anatomy of the mouth. And we went over some of this in the respiratory system. So here we have some more anatomy of the mouth, what makes up some of the boundaries. You can review these on your own, but I won't ask you specifics about the anatomy specifically of the mouth. The tongue is very important for gripping food, repositioning it, and help us swallow. So there's lots of muscles associated with the tongue. You have different papillae on the surface of the tongue, which are bumps that have your taste buds in them. You can see those papillae shown there. The teeth is something that I do want you guys to focus on a little bit. We have deciduous teeth, permanent teeth. So kind of whether it's your baby or adult teeth. And you can see here the deciduous teeth with the permanent teeth coming in above. You have upper, lower teeth and supplied by different nerves, which you don't need to know. You do need to know the tooth structure. So there's probably about 3 questions on the exam asking you about the anatomy of a tooth. So you should know what signifies the crown, the root, the enamel, which is the outermost hardest substance in the body, the dentin, and the pulp cavity. So a picture like this will probably show up at least 3 times on your lecture exam. Understanding the anatomy of a tooth is important. The salivary glands then produce saliva. They're compound tubulo-alveolar glands, and the parotid gland is the largest of the salivary glands. You should know where they all lie for lab and lecture as well. So here are the major salivary glands and where they all lie. There's 3 of them: the parotid over the masseter muscle, the sublingual under the tongue, and the submandibular under the mandible. Then the oropharynx and the laryngopharynx are passageways for air and food. They're your throat. They're lined with stratified squamous. There's an external muscle layer. The esophagus then is just a muscular tube, and it joins the stomach inferior to the diaphragm, and at the cardiac sphincter, this is what will close the lumen to prevent stomach acid from entering the esophagus. The cardiac sphincter is also called the gastroesophageal or inferior esophageal sphincter. The microscopic anatomy of the esophagus, it's lined with non-keratinized stratified squamous epithelium. There's mucus glands. It has the 4 layers like everywhere else in the digestive tract that you can see there. The stomach then is the site where food is churned into chyme, and it's where the secretion of pepsin, which begins protein digestion. The food remains in the stomach for approximately 4 hours, and you should know well the regions of the stomach, which are shown here. There are several questions about the gross anatomy of the stomach and what happens in each region. Here's an endoscopic view of a normal stomach, which is kind of neat to see. And here's a cadaver view of the stomach. So here are the layers of the stomach: the muscularis, epithelium, the mucosa with gastric pits. The gastric glands of the fundus in the stomach have mucous neck cells, parietal cells, which secrete hydrochloric acid and gastric intrinsic factor. You should know what parietal cells secrete in the stomach. Sorry, I'm trying to write a little star there. And you should know what chief cells secrete. Chief cells secrete pepsinogen, which is activated to pepsin when it encounters acid to help break down your proteins. And parietal cells secrete hydrochloric acid and gastric intrinsic factor. And they're found within these gastric pits in the lining of the stomach wall. The small intestine then is the longest portion. There's 3 subdivisions to it in order: duodenum, jejunum, and ileum. It's the site of most enzymatic digestion and absorption, so that is a good test question. And then you should know these 3 orders of the small intestine in order as well. The duodenum receives digestive enzymes in bile. The main pancreatic duct and the common bile duct enter the duodenum. So you can see that here. The pancreatic duct and the bile duct will enter the duodenum at this major duodenal papilla. And you should also know these tubes going into and out of the liver and the gallbladder, which we'll talk about. Those will be accessory organs. So there's modifications for absorption in the small intestine. You have circular folds, villi, and microvilla, all kind of for absorbing everything that the small intestine needs to. Here are histology of the intestinal wall. And I just realized I'm going to run back to the stomach really quick, because one thing we didn't talk about much is inside the stomach, there are the rugae of the mucosa. And the rugae of the mucosa help to increase absorption in the stomach and also to help increase surface area. And I don't think it talked a lot about that, but I just wanted to mention the rugae, understand what the rugae of the stomach does as well. All right. So the duodenum receives intestinal juices and bile. We have the histology of the intestinal wall. The large intestine, the main functions of the large intestine are to absorb water. So not much is digested or absorbed in the large intestine. And you have mass peristaltic movements, which force feces toward the rectum. Here's the gross anatomy of the large intestine, which you should understand well. The different parts of the large intestine, and then special features like the Teniae coli. It's a longitudinal muscularis externa. The haustra are puckering created by that muscular Teniae coli. The cecum is the blind pouch in the beginning of the large intestine. The appendix contains lymphoid tissue. It's like a safe haven for beneficial good bacteria. And then the colon is divided into these distinct segments that you should know well. The rectum descends along the inferior half of the sacrum, and then the anal canal is the last subdivision. So here are the parts of the large intestine. You should understand what the flexures are: the right colic flexure and the left colic flexure, and where they're located and what parts of the small intestines join to form those. So you should understand well the parts of the large intestine. Know that it's the site of most water absorption. And then we have arterial nerve supplies and nervous supply, and I don't go over that too much. The defecation reflex, I don't go over too much of that. The anatomy of the large intestine, the digestive processes, and the histology of the alimentary canal. These 2 slides are probably good to review and understand, and what each cell does. Specifically, I'm going to ask for chief cells and parietal cells and what they secrete. The liver then is the largest gland in the body. The digestive function of the liver is that it forms bile, which helps to digest fats. And here's a look at the liver. And the gallbladder is kind of on the underneath side of the liver, and it will store the bile. And the cystic ducts connects the gallbladder to the common hepatic duct, and together they will form the bile duct. So the microscopic anatomy of the liver, we have hepatocytes, or the functional cells. Some functions of the hepatocytes are shown here, which you can read through. And that's a look at the microscopic anatomy of the liver and how it's made of this triad feature, where these kind of hepatocytes form a hexagonal shape. The gallbladder stores and concentrates bile and expels bile into the duodenum, which helps to digest fats. Cholecystokinin is released from enteroendocrine cells in response to fatty chyme. And again, you should understand well this picture, especially the picture of all the ducts. So here's your common hepatic duct coming from the liver. It joins up with the cystic duct coming from the gallbladder to form the common bile duct. And the common bile duct joins up with the pancreatic duct, and it gives out its bile and pancreatic juice to your duodenal papilla of the duodenum. The pancreas then has endocrine and exocrine functions. The endocrine functions are to secrete two hormones that regulate your blood sugar. And the exocrine function is to produce most of the enzymes that digest food in the small intestine. The main pancreatic duct is what will join with the bile duct to form that ampulla, which empties into the duodenum. And here's a look at the pancreas and the different types of cells in the pancreas. The exocrine function by those digestive fluids are created by the acinar cells. And then the other types of cells, the beta and alpha cells, are what will create the hormones. Peptic ulcers then are erosions of the mucosa of a region of the alimentary canal, where gastric ulcers in the stomach, duodenal ulcers in the duodenum. They can be caused by a bacteria. And here's a look at what a peptic ulcer looks like. Not very pleasant, usually caused by a bacteria. An intestinal obstruction can be mechanically obstructed by an adhesion, a tumor, anything else that's foreign. And a non-mechanical obstruction can be a halt in peristalsis or movement of waste due to trauma or intestines touched during a surgery. Inflammatory bowel disease, inflammation of intestinal wall, which could be Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis. Viral hepatitis is jaundice and flu-like symptoms of the liver. And cystic fibrosis in the pancreas, pancreatic ducts can become blocked with mucus from cystic fibrosis, and the clogged ducts can prevent pancreatic juices from entering the small intestine. So this means that fats and other nutrients might not be able to be absorbed. Embryological development of your digestive tract, I don't include, so you don't have to worry about that, but we'll end this talking about the digestive system later in life. By middle age, you might form more gallstones or ulcers that could due to activity or nutrition levels. And by old age, the activity of your digestive organs declines, fewer digestive juices are produced, absorption is less efficient, peristalsis slows, dehydration of fecal mass could lead to constipation, and diverticulosis and cancer of your digestive organs, specifically colon cancer, can also occur. So that was a quick lecture. Thanks for listening, guys, and hopefully that will help direct your studying. Take care.